Hey, welcome back to the channel. I'm David. Today we're going to be taking a look at generating a random title, something you could use with, say, like a YouTube video. I think this will be a really good example if you're kind of new to JavaScript. So a pretty good beginner video, but we'll also be looking at some code cleanup stuff. I'm not going to get too in the weeds on like the technical reasons for doing these things, but I'll just talk through like some of the practical benefits you'll get from cleaning up some of the code that we have after we get it all working. So with that said, we're going to jump right into it. The idea on this one is to be able to generate a title like this and be able to do it randomly. So you're just going to be kind of a random topic generator. And I'll be using code sandbox for this, but you could use anything. And I'll, when I hit the point where we have a working version of this where the code's just kind of messy, I'll save that for reference and make that available. Put a link, I guess, somewhere down in the description of the video. And then same thing with the cleaned up version. I'll make a copy of that available for you. So don't feel like you have to, code along with me, but I do think you'll get the most out of exercises like this if you try to actually type out the code yourself, as silly as it sounds. So yeah, basically we're gonna try to randomize all three parts of this title. And what we're gonna do is just do it the crudest way possible to start. So at the moment, what we have, if you're not familiar with JavaScript, I'll kind of start at the beginning here. So here we're just importing some basic styles. Well, actually, let's jump over here. So here is our HTML page. We have a script tag at the end of the body that's pointing to our JavaScript file that we were just looking at. And then that JavaScript file is importing styles. And then basically it's going to run whatever we put in here. And then it's going to look up the app, an element with the ID of app, and then it's going to make its HTML whatever we set for HTML here. And just to show you that there is a div in the body that has the ID of app. So that's kind of the basic setup. So the HTML runs the script's going to pull in the styles, and then the JavaScript is going to also just update this part of the HTML with whatever we want to put in there. And we're not really going to be playing around with the HTML itself too much. We're just going to add an H1 for title. So the first thing we'll want to do is basically generate this HTML more like programmatically. So it's just a string right now. So what we could do is just make something called our topic generator, or we could call it title generator. But I'm gonna call it topic generator, and then we'll just use it in the title. So for now, we'll just we'll get rid of maybe we'll just pull this whole thing just to keep it really basic. I like to take small steps when I'm programming, so we'll put the whole thing in here, and then that means here we can just use string interpolation, which is a fancy way for saying we can put variables or make calls to functions within a string using these backticks. And if we just use $sign and these curly braces, then whatever we put in here is going to actually be run, and not just output as a string. So what that allows us to do is up here, we're just now generating awesome JavaScript by returning it from here and inserting it in that H1 tag. So if we change this, it should update on the right. So now we have awesome's JavaScript. And you could, for now, you could ignore all these errors showing up over here on the console side. So I may even just pull this down some. Let's see. That's okay, but it's going to be showing errors there. They're just mainly happening because it's trying to run everything like as we're typing it. So one thing we might do is want to just swap out like whatever the language is that we're interested in. So we could make a constant for languages. And just to start, actually, let's make a constant that's just language, and we'll make that JavaScript. I'm going to use single quotes. Try to use single quotes for all the strings. You can use single or double. It's just a style preference. So we've got this new constant for language, but you'll notice it's not actually used anywhere. That's why it's complaining about that. So what we can do is, again, go to backticks here, and then we can just swap out the language. And we're going to have to update this because it's no longer just going to output a string. It's going to actually evaluate something, which means here it's going to use our language constant. So now we're building the string with this value up here, and if we change it, it'll update in the title that we're outputting. So again, I like to just take these small steps. I find it really helpful when programming just to kind of take the smallest step possible. Because if something does start going wrong, it'll be easier to correct whatever your mistake was, instead of putting in a whole bunch of code and then you're not sure like where exactly the problem's coming from. So now what we can do is we can say, since we do want this to be a little more sophisticated, we want to use a list of languages. So we'll say our languages include JavaScript. And all I'm doing here is setting up a new constant called languages that's an array and only has one element, and it's JavaScript. And then for the time being, we can just say this is languages 0. And that's just the 0 index, which is going to be the first element out of an array. Zero-based indices. So again, you can see we've got JavaScript showing up. So our array is now working. And then this sets us up to include more languages in here. So I'm going to update this and just add a couple more languages. So we'll add TypeScript. I do want to add, we're doing this in JavaScript, but all this stuff is really mostly going to apply to like any language you're using. And then let's add, let's see, what do we want to add? Get anything, Python. It's a different language. All right, so now we've got 3 languages in here, and just to test it out, we'll pick a different index, and that should give us TypeScript. And then if we pick the next index, should give us Python. So we're getting closer. We can, you know, with a small change, we can update which language we want. And to make that even more explicit, I'm going to call this language index, and we'll just set it to 2 for now. And then that's what value we'll use down here. So it's going to be language index. And again, you can see if we update this, it's going to pull in the right corresponding language. So off to a good start. And the next thing we need to do is figure out how we want to get just a random language out of this set. Or we want to be able to like programmatically choose a language from this set. But for now, we'll just call that like a random selection. So the way we can do that is, instead of just saying our language index is 0, we can do, we're going to do math.random, which is how we can get a random random number between 0 and 1. And then we'll have to multiply that by like our maximum value that we want. So that's going to be languages.length. And then this isn't going to automatically be an integer. And we also want to make sure that we round down so that we're looking at like 0 up to the maximum value that we want, -1 technically. But yeah, basically this will give us a random index that's either 0, 1, or 2 at this point. And then if we were to add another language, it would give us a random index that's like 0, 1, 2, or 3. So it'll never give us an index that's this value. It'll always be 1 less than this. So anyway, so what we have at this point now is a random selection, and we can see if we just make some code changes here, we should see updated values come through. Yeah, there's JavaScript's coming in. Let's try something else. TypeScript came back. So yeah, this is looking good. And I'm not going to worry about cleaning up this code right now. I'm just going to do everything kind of in line without being too careful about how I'm doing things. So I think the next thing we want to do, let's try maybe just swapping out these expressions, emoji expressions. So we're going to do kind of the same process here. Just take the smallest step we can. So we're going to say constant expression is equal to, we'll just take that for now. And then again, we're going to just replace it. So we're going to use string interpolation to evaluate expression. And you can see it's coming up on the right side over there. If we wanted to test this out too, we could use a different expression and just see if it updates. So there we go. Now we got the skull on there. And then we'll go through basically the same process. So we'll want to say constant expressions is equal to, for now, we'll just make it a list of one thing, one string. And then we'll just say expressions of 0 here. And you can see it's updated again with the heart eyes. And then instead of just hard coding that 0, we're going to make an expression index. And that's going to be 0. And again, it's giving me a warning because that's not getting used anywhere at the moment. So when I plug it in here, you can see now we're able to use that index and it's rendering without any problems. And then yeah, we're basically going to want to do the same thing again to pick a random item from this list. So instead of 0, I'm just going to use that math.floor of math.random times expressions.length. And you can see it re-rendered. It's not too exciting right now because we don't have multiple expressions. So let's go ahead and just add some more emojis in here. And we should see as we change that, yeah, we get some random new emojis in there. So, this is looking pretty cool. We can get, that's given us our expression. This is giving us our language or topic. You could do anything in here. We're just using programming languages as an example. So the next thing we have is we want to change this adjective. So we're going to say adjective, and then following the same pattern, we'll say adjective is equal to awesome. Actually, sorry, we'll make it a string first. And we need to make that lowercase. Okay, so now we're generating the topic on the right is expected with awesome, and then we'll just go through the same process. So we're going to make our adjectives, and they're going to, for now, just be length 1, and then we'll make an adjective index that's 0, and then we'll say from our adjectives give us the 0th item. Whoop, sorry, we want to use the index. And I'm going to clear this out. Oh, what happened? Why is it not rendering? Let's see. Adjective. I'm not sure if it's actually a problem. Oh, let's try changing this. Sometimes it just kind of gets stuck. Let's take a quick look at this. So we have our adjectives, have an adjective index. We're getting our adjective using the adjectives and the adjective index. I'm not sure why it's not rendering. Hold on a second. I'm just going to try making a couple changes. Sometimes code sandbox gets caught up a little bit. Just to be sure too, we can get rid of that and just go back to using awesome. Okay, so there's something's off. Let's see what it is. Maybe I've got a misspelling or something like that. Okay, well, seems to be working again. Yeah, I think it just got caught up on something. Yeah, we can go ahead now and just do the same process we went through where we test out some other adjectives. Can say the worst. What else can we do? Let's say optimized, something like that. So we should be able to change this index here and get these other. There we go. Perfect. The worst JavaScript, and it's crying or laughing, crying. I think that's pretty good. And then yeah, we should be able to give it the second index and see optimized is showing up. So then again, we'll just copy and paste what we had here to randomize which one we pick. So here we'll say adjectives. And we should be able to make some code changes and see that update. Yeah, I don't know why it gets stuck. It's like, there it goes. Doesn't seem to be picking a random one. Let's try it. Oh, there it goes. I don't know. For some reason, it kept using the the very first one. So cool. So at this point, we have language, expression, and adjective all changing independently, and we're programmatically outputting that. So, if we wanted to, we could just stop here. And this is a good time to point out, this is fine if you're learning how to program JavaScript, and you're not kind of like intermediate or advanced. This is a decent place to be, but there is a lot of room to clean this up. So some of the problems that I notice, this is the kind of stuff, if you work somewhere, like should come up in code review. People who are more senior can point out to you. Also, I want to mention I have a Discord which I'll link, and if you want me to give feedback on your code, constructive feedback, I'm happy to do videos like this where I go through and just like clean up small pieces of code or comment on things that I notice could be improved. So the things that I see that could be improved here, I'm just going to make a list at the top. So these are improvements. And right off the bat, the ones that I see are we're repeating like the exact same randomization. Or like a chooser. If you think about it more generically, it's just something that's meant to choose one of the items out of the list. It happens to be done at random at the moment, but you may want some other method besides it being random. And specifically, I'm referring to math.floor of math.random of whatever the thing is that we care about's length. So that's something that we could clean up. Another one is we're pretty much repeating this process, the exact same process for each of these things that we want to choose from. So repeating the choosing process. I'm going to change that from improvements to problems. These are the problems that we're recognizing. And then another one is that these lists are all hard-coded inside of this function. And the problem with that is if you ever want to change those lists, you have to change this function, and then you have multiple reasons to change the function. You're changing it like if your list of languages changes, or if your list of expressions changes, or if your list of adjectives changes. And then another, I won't get into the details of it, but like basically what's happening when you do this too is you're hard coding information inside of this function, and there's no way to change it. So, ideally you could change this just completely independently of this, and it wouldn't be a problem. And also, if you wanted to provide different lists for different reasons, you could do that. So one common thing would be like if you wanted to do testing of this, you may just want to be able to provide like one example language and not a huge list or something. So I'm just going to call that like not extensible or hard-coded lists. So yeah, we'll try to just kind of go through these one at a time. So for now, I'm going to make like probably I could just call a randomizer, but I think I want to call it like zero-based randomizer, because what we're going to want to take is like the max, and we're always going to return something that is between 0 and 1 less than that max. And I think by calling it a zero-based randomizer instead of just a randomizer, it makes that more clear. You could make the assumption that you're returning like a number between 1 or like 1 through the max. So I'm just going to call it a zero-based randomizer. And we're going to take this whole thing, and we're going to put it here. And then all we care about is that we multiply by the max at this point. And we just want to return the value directly. So you could do it like this, or you could use the shorter notation for that, which is just a bare arrow that's going to return something. It might be short enough that we could do that. Yeah, it'll fit. So let's go with that. And then what we can do is in all these places where we are calling it directly, we'll just update it to do this. And it's not necessarily that it's we're doing this not because it's shorter, but because we have this idea that exists and is repeated in a bunch of different places. And really, we just want to have one implementation for this, not 3. Like if, for some reason, if we had to change how we randomize things, we could just do it in one place. So this already looks a little bit cleaner to me. It's more clear that the intent of this is to, it's a zero-based randomizer, and it just takes the length of whatever the thing is that you want and gives you an index back. So I'm already liking that. And then, so I guess we can check that one off of our list. So we took care of that. Another one we can do that's pretty easy, we can do this in a couple steps, is to just start moving these constants out. So for now, we'll just do this. Moving them out of the function. And this doesn't completely solve our problem, but it's a step in the right direction. Okay, so now basically we're just referring to these constants that are defined outside of this function. And in its most simplistic form, even if this is the only benefit you got, like if you made these lists super long, at least they're not like making this function change and get really big. And you could pull these out into like separate files too if you wanted to, and it would be clear like this is where you get your adjectives, this is where you get your expressions, this is where you get your languages. And then let's see, what do we want to do next? So repeating the choosing process. Yeah, maybe we want to deal with, so I guess we kind of took care of this. I think we took care of half of this. So let's move the hard-coded list up here. And maybe we'll continue kind of down that road. So the other thing you could do is have the ability to like pass in those values. So you might want to have like languages, expressions, and adjectives. I can't type apparently. And so now the advantage of doing this is even though we have these defined, you could pass in whatever you wanted here, and then we're gonna have to update this to care about languages, expressions, and adjectives. And what's it complaining about here? Ref is undefined. So yeah, these don't have any values. Maybe that's what it's complaining about. Let's try this. Sorry, just for now, to try to rule out some stuff, I'm going to do that. All right, cool. Yeah, we can worry about, yeah. Anyway, so this, I'm recording clear, so I gotta keep. I'll see you in a minute. Okay, so yeah, now basically we have the option to pass in any languages we want, any expressions we want, any adjectives we want, which is pretty nice. So I think that removes our not extensible problem, because at this point we don't have to use these hard-coded things that are predefined. We can just send in whatever we feel like sending in. So that's a nice improvement. And then we are still kind of using the same process over and over. So, excuse me, the same choosing process over and over. So what we could do is we could define a choose from list function. And what we'll want to do, we need to return something from here. Let's just, for now, do that. And so instead of on each of these pulling out the index and then using the randomizer and then getting the thing that we want from the list, we could update this so that we take a list and then we call, let's just go ahead and do this. So our index is going to be chosen as using the generic list or whatever it is that we pass in, and then we can just call it item, I guess, and it'll be list and index, and then we'll return the item. We can even call this like item from list. So yeah, let's just call it item from list. We'll do this in a couple steps, but yeah, basically now we can just do item from list with languages as the list. And then that lets us get rid of that. And you can see in the top right that it is picking language as we would expect. So now we're just going to do this with the remaining ones. So our expression is going to be item from list of expressions. And we can get rid of that. And this also starts to get a little more self-explanatory as we go. So again, we'll do item from list of adjectives. And then we don't need that anymore. And so this is starting to get pretty concise. So for all these things, we want to choose an item from the given list, and then that's what we're going to put in the string. And you could even, if you wanted to, you could do something like make an array out of these into a join with a space between them, but I kind of like just spelling out what they are. So yeah, and this, notice how short this function is at this point. And it's because we keep removing responsibilities from it and things that could change from it. So now it just has basically one responsibility, which is to get random items from each of these things and then make a string out of them. If we wanted to, we could even remove, we could return like an array of these things and let something else figure out how to format it. But since we only really have one output format that we care about at the moment, so I'm not too concerned about getting rid of that responsibility. But there's another thing here that's a problem. It's similar to when we had all these hard-coded lists earlier. And that's that inside of item from list, we're hard-coding how we choose an item. And we could improve that so that you could provide different ways to choose items. One way that this could become a problem like pretty quickly is if you wanted to test this. It'd be hard to test because it's just choosing random values out of a list and you don't have any control over like the randomness. So the only way you could really test it is to give it like a list that's either empty or has one thing, and that way you know it should just give you back whatever is in there. So anyway, so what we can do here is we can set up another parameter, and we can make it this zero-based randomizer by default. I'm just going to break this across multiple lines for now just to make it more clear. And then when we do that, we can just replace zero-based randomizer with a chooser. And all it needs to know is what the list's length is. And so at this point, it's pretty cool because if you wanted to, you could replace the zero-based randomizer with like anything that you wanted that would give you an index back. So if you always wanted to get back index 1, you could just make a chooser that always returns 1. Or if you wanted to get index 0, you could make a chooser that just returns 0. And that would work for you. And we could show that too real quick. So we could say, we could make something that's like returns 1. And this would literally just be 1. And then if we wanted to, so that would, if we do that for languages, we should always get TypeScript. So here in items for list for languages, we could just put returns 1 as our chooser. And then you'll see there that it's going to return TypeScript. If we change it to like 2, it should always return Python. And if we change it to 0, it should always return JavaScript. So yeah, it's just little things like this you can do to improve your code and make it extensible later. So like, you know, if you wanted to switch up how you choose things or what you wanted the available values to be, like you've got the freedom to do that without coming in and actually changing the code here. And that's really nice, especially if you're working in a team, or even on your own, like just be able to come back later and change one thing and not having to worry about like breaking everything. I'm going to reorder these two. So now we're going to go adjective, language, expression, because that's how this is set up down here. I'm I'm like kind of crazy with formatting, and I like lining things up, but not everybody likes that. But I find it a lot easier to read if I do like column based formatting. So that's how I'm going to leave this. So yeah, I think at this point we've kind of done everything that we want to do. We could get a little more idiomatic with our names. So like topic generator should be cased like this, and item from list should probably be start initially lowercase. I'm going to leave the constants uppercased. We could do zero-based randomizer like that. But yeah, so I mean, here we could just add whatever we want now. Like we could make this list really long. We could add Ruby. We could add C. We could add C++. You know, just whatever you want to do. You add whatever emojis you want. But yeah, so this is just a quick example of how you could do, you know, random generation of titles. But all these techniques apply to really any kind of code that you write in any language that you want to use. If I was going to spend more time cleaning this up too, and this wasn't just an example, I would probably make, you know, like an area for constants that aren't going to change, and maybe make like a separate file for languages, expressions, and adjectives. And then, you know, some of this stuff is pretty generic. It's not very specific to generating topics. So you could probably take like the zero-based randomizer and like item from list, and you could probably group those into some kind of like list related file. If we were using TypeScript too, you know, we might have a type associated with these lists, and it might make sense to have like a file that's about working with that type where we would put these functions. But yeah, I'm feeling pretty good about like where this is at the moment. You know, one thing you can do too is like, instead of just using ordered parameters, you could, you know, basically use like the object style and pass in languages, expressions, and adjectives. Like this isn't going to be exactly right, but kind of like that. You'll have to change how you set the defaults on those. But actually, like maybe an easier example would be this. You know, if you wanted like named parameters, you could do that. But yeah, I feel like this is in a pretty good spot. So yeah, thanks for following along. These are just some common techniques that you can use to clean up your code, and they should apply to pretty much any language. I've used these for, you know, JavaScript, TypeScript, Ruby, C#. You know, these are kind of just like general principles. I don't want to go too deep. They do apply to like the solid principles in programming, but I don't want to go too deep into that in the moment. Just trying to show some practical examples. So yeah, like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, I will share this code. I'll link it in the description wherever I put it. It might just be a gist or something for now. And you can play around with it if you want and build your own version. So yeah, feel free to grab that. And then also, you know, there's a link to the Discord below. So if you want to hop in there and talk with other people about this code, or sometimes, you know, I'm hanging out in there and can answer questions. That'd be great. If you like the video, hit like, subscribe, hit the notification bell if you want to be notified when videos come out. Thanks for watching, and have a good day.